21st, 2026 Environmental Quality Commission meeting. This is an in-person and virtual meeting with Environmental Quality Commission EQC members, city staff, and members of the public. We'll do a roll call. I'd like to introduce staff and EQC members present. In the room, we have Chair McKenna, Vice Chair Meyer, Commissioners Angel, Headley, Hernandez, and Hill. Staff present is Sustainability Manager Rachel Launder. Ms. Launder, would you please provide instructions to the Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Welcome to the Environmental Quality Commission meeting. Mr. Kissel. Have a seat wherever you'd like. There's one seat right here. This evening for public comments, there's a couple of options. We'll have public comment for items not at the agenda at the top of our meeting, and each item will have an opportunity for public comment after the presentation. If you'd like to make public comment, there's cards over there that you can grab and bring to me when you're ready. And if you're online, you can press *9 or the raise hand button, and we'll be able to unmute you. And just to clarify, on Zoom, if you hit the raise hand button, it's either at the bottom of your screen or to the right of your name, depending on your device. And then the *9 is if you're calling in from a landline or cell phone. Public comment is typically 3 minutes for items on our agenda. And I think I'll leave it there, Chair.
Great, thank you. We'll move to item C, public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the Commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. While you are not required to provide your name or city of residence, it is helpful. The Commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the Commission cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment, other than to provide general information. Sustainability Manager Launder, could you please call for public comment?
Sure. If you'd like to make public comment on an item not on the agenda, we have public comment cards over there. You can return them to me. If you're online, you can hit the raise hand button. And if you're calling in, you can press *9. And I don't have any cards in the room or hands on our Zoom. So we can close public comment for items not on the agenda and return to you.
Thank you. We'll move to item D, regular business. D1, approve the December 17th, 2025 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. Do we have any clarifying questions from EQC before we take public comment? Seeing none, Ms. Launder, do we have any public comment on this item?
Sure. Opening up public comment for item D1, approve the December 17th, 2025 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. If you're in the room, you can grab a card, return it to me. If you're online, you can press the raise hand button. If you're calling in, you can press *9. No cards in the room or hands online, so we can close public comment on item D1.
Yeah, open it up for EQC discussion and or a motion.
Move to approve the minutes. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Headley and a second by Commissioner Hernandez to approve the December 17th, 2025 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. And since we are all in the room, we do not need to do roll call voting. So all in favor, raise your hand. Okay. The motion passes with 7 in favor. Thank you.
Great. We'll move on to item D2. Deny the appeal and uphold staff's decision to approve the permit application to remove 14 City of Menlo Park heritage trees at 68 Willow Road. I will be recusing myself from this item based on professional relationships. Vice Chair Meyer will introduce this item.
Okay. My turn. Staff will start with a presentation briefing the EQC on their role, responsibility, and authority as it relates to heritage tree appeals and on staff's recommendation. The permit applicants will have 10 minutes to present any additional information they would like the EQC to consider. The appellant will have 10 minutes to present any additional information they would like the EQC to consider, followed by public comment and EQC discussion and motion. I'll turn it over to City Arborist Jillian Keller now for the staff presentation.
Wonderful, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jillian Keller. I'm Menlo Park City Arborist. I reviewed the heritage tree removal permit application associated with this proposed redevelopment project. Okay, so when I review heritage tree removal permit applications, such as this one, I have a checklist of things that I look for. That includes a completed application form, an arborist report, when related to development, set construction plans, mitigation plan, and an alternative design and cost analysis study. So for a project of this scale, complete redevelopment of the site entailing many tree removals, there's a lot of mitigation required. So the mitigation is equivalent to the tree's appraised values. So in this case, the sum of the appraised values of all of the heritage trees proposed for removal is about $472,000. A lot of money. Given the intensity and the density of the proposed construction, there unfortunately isn't a whole lot of space for planting. I understand that, and I appreciated you all trying to work with me to fit as many trees as possible on the site while also trying to make sure we planted the right trees in the right spots. After all that, about 50,000 proposed in heritage tree replacement trees planted back on the property. That includes street trees. The remaining unmitigated value of $422,000 would be due as an in lieu fee to fully offset the required mitigation for the proposed heritage tree removals. Okay, so they have a mitigation plan that meets the city's requirements. They had a completed application form, a completed arborist report. They had a copy of the construction plans. They also need an alternative design and cost analysis. So this requirement is perhaps the most difficult. So the applicant needs to propose alternative designs that would enable the preservation of the tree. And then we see how feasible those alternative designs are financially. So we take the cost of implementing the alternative design compared to the cost of implementing the original design, which entails tree removal. Take that delta, that difference between the two construction costs, and compare it to the tree's appraised value. If it is more than 140% the tree's appraised value in Menlo Park, it is deemed financially infeasible to implement the alternative design, and we have to approve the removal. So they did provide an alternative design and cost analysis. So this was one of the trees that I was interested in seeing if it's possible to preserve. With the complete redevelopment of sites like this, the greatest opportunity for tree preservation usually lies with the trees on the outside, the perimeter of the property. They're usually the least impacted. So this is a city-owned and maintained heritage tree, a native valley oak, quite large, excellent health and structure. The notes from the project arborist were good specimen. So this is an example of the alternative design proposed by the applicant. So they said that in order to preserve this heritage valley oak, they would have to omit housing units. Of course, those units cost a lot of money. There would also be conflict with the proposed utility line, sidewalk. So they use the sale price of the units that would have to be omitted to enable the preservation of the tree to establish financial infeasibility of tree preservation. So technically that met the city's requirements. So I had to approve. I think we're ready for the next slide. Similar alternative designs and cost analysis were done for the other trees proposed for removal as well. Now, on to your role as the members of our EQC. Are you gonna do that one? For IFAM?
So as the EQC role in this appeal hearing is that commissioners should review and discuss the heritage tree permit application and the site plans submitted. And it's just a reminder that the project is an SB 330 housing development project. Another responsibility is to review and discuss the appellant's proposed alternatives. So as submitted as of what was it, last week when this agenda was proposed. So that means no additional removal alternatives or concepts or third-party expert testimony shall be reviewed by the commission. And then the EQC is always welcome to ask any clarifying questions to all parties. Here with city staff, we have Chris, who is a planner involved with this project. There's Jillian, who is the city arborist, who did the review and determination of the heritage tree permit application. And we do have Edrith, who is the engineer on the land development team as well. So we do have a few experts in this room who can answer some of your clarifying questions. And that wraps up our presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Now the permit applicant will have 10 minutes to present information for the EQC to consider. Go ahead.
I'll just pull it up for you. And then I will be running a timer, so we do have to keep it at the 10 minutes. So I'll let me know if you'll want like a minute warning, or I'll just interrupt you after this time. Does this look right?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Potts with SDG Architects, the architect on the project, here representing the development team, who's got their full team here to answer any questions that may come up. I want to thank the commission for hearing this tonight. I do want to reiterate and remind you that this is an SB 330 housing project, providing some much needed sort of first time family housing for the city. It does follow the municipal code as far as the tree removal goes and how it was derived, and has been, reviewed and recommended for approval by the city's arborist. You can go to the next slide. So this is a 50 unit townhome project, replacing a 27,000 square foot aging office building. 8 of these 50 units are scheduled to be low income, below market rate units for the city's RHNA numbers. This project has been, thoroughly vetted. The original submittal for this full submittal was in July of 2024. And so we've gone through, the city's various steps and submittal processes with the project team. You have the next slide. Let me go through these quickly. Again, we've followed the Menlo Park municipal codes, the state building codes, all of the public utility infrastructure standards, Menlo Park's tree ordinance. Some of the major basic site components for the project are, of course, the building footprints, needed to get to the proposed density, which is 50 units, is 20 units the acre. This site has a density of 30 units the acre, so it could be up to 75 units on this site. We had to obviously handle all the internal streets based on fire department requirements for widths and turning radii, things like that, which, take up over 25,000 square feet of the site. Bioretention basins, required by the Bay Regional Water Quality Board. And then we got our sewer, water, gas, electrical infrastructure to, consider there. You can go to the next slide. This slide just basically shows the trees to be removed and the trees to be saved. You can see the trees mostly to be saved are along the creek. I think the applicant, the city, everybody felt that that was the most important area of the site to save the trees within that sort of riparian portion of the site. And then there is one tree that's in good health up in the upper corner of the site there that was outside of the construction area. You can go to the next slide, please. So again, this shows the saved trees and also shows the new replacement trees proposed for the site. These are larger 36 to 48 inch box trees that are located around the perimeter of the site and then within the site boundary where they could fit. And again, worked with the city arborist on location, species requirements for those trees. Next slide, please. So really, this is, the juxt of the presentation, and just to kind of, make sure everybody can visualize what's going on the site here. We have obviously the building footprints in yellow on there, which, take up about 42,000 square feet of this 109,000 square foot site. We have the area where we've set aside the trees and the riparian area, which takes up about 15,000 square feet of the site. The streets, obviously, taking up another 26,000 square feet of the site. You can see the green basins kind of highlighted all over the site. That's all of the state mandated water quality, bioretention basins, collection areas. Those are fairly specifically located based on roof directions, roof pitches, availability to connect them. And then you see all of the blue storm drain lines connecting those basins, as well as other storm drain features. And then, lighter on there is all of the electrical and gas and other infrastructure. The trees that were called out on the appellants from the appellant's arborist, as far as saving them, it appeared that there was 3 trees there that they specifically called out. Tree number 28 is in the upper left there. That's along the frontage of the project, and partially within the city required sidewalk, city owned, city maintained sidewalk. Moving that sidewalk around that tree, as noted in the other document, would require movement, loss, significant change of units along the street there. It's important to note too that you see all these streets, you see all these buildings, the preparation of the site around those structures goes significantly beyond the boundary, the footprint of those structures, in order to get the soil prepared for foundations and things like that. You can't just compact it just to the very edge of the building. It goes out beyond that, needs to be prepared, compacted, and all of that. And so it takes up more space than just what you're seeing on there. So there's a lot of preparation of the dirt itself that happens there. Tree 45, again, that's in a sidewalk. It's right in one of the storm drain lines. There was a note from the appellant's arborist about ways to prepare that and get through that root system and meander those pipes through there. That is a gravity fed storm drain line. it's not really able to meander up and down and around things. The water has to flow in that line. That line has to be set at the proper, angles and meet up with all of the other depths of all of the other storm drain lines that it's connecting to. So it's not just a line that you could meander around several roots and things like that. In addition, that particular tree, the roots are quite near the surface, and so all the preparation for the sidewalk and everything in that area would be significant. And very similar with tree A8 at the bottom. It's right at a bioretention swale with a storm drain line that, again, gravity fed, has to be at heights that connect it to all of the other storm drain lines at all of their other heights that are required for the drainage to properly work on the site. I will tell you that C3 and water quality is one thing that we've never been able to waive out of, reduce, or move from any project, regardless of state law. So it's a fairly set piece of the project. And again, that tree is very close to the foundation of that building, which is going to be prepared well beyond that foundation. So really not a savable tree without, significant removal of units and changing of the site and things like that, which again, this being an SB 330 project is really outside of sort of the purview of changing the project around. I think with that, I'm here and the team is here for any questions that y'all might have regarding the project. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Now the appellant will have 10 minutes to present any information for the EQC to consider.
That's me. So Richard Crum, I live in Menlo Park and Linfield Oaks. I'm the individual that appealed the removal of the 14 British trees on site at 68 Willow. And I appreciate everybody taking the time to go through this. I think putting it out there, I have no issue with the project as it stands and bringing housing to Menlo Park. I think it's a good thing for the community and the neighborhood. I think my point of view is simply one of how we focused on doing our best to preserve and evaluate all options and pathways to protect and preserve the trees that are on this site. And I think in accordance with the Heritage Tree Ordinance and the spirit of that ordinance, I think it's the responsibility of the commission, of the citizens, and of the community to make sure that we actually have explored those paths. So I had a chance to sit down and meet with the developer team back in December 3rd. We talked about a few things. So that tree number 44 is one of the things that came out of that meeting. We had some questions and probed and pushed on, is this a spot where you could do something different with the drainage line? Is this something that you could move things around and make that happen? And to their credit, they went back and they said, after a couple of days, we have a solution here on this one. And their arborist also highlighted tree number 45. In their report, they identified it as essentially a perfect specimen. So great root structure, great quality. Redwoods are resilient trees. They can take a lot around the root bases, the root bulb, and the infrastructure. And so those two, and 44 in particular, I think seemed like it was a good solution. I think what struck me in that conversation was the fact that they didn't have an answer in the meeting. I asked the question of what about those trees, and the response was, "Oh, I don't know. We'll go look into it." And to me, that shows that preservation and consideration of preservation wasn't actually considered as part of this process. It showed me that they hadn't even thought about the possibility of doing something creative, of thinking about tunneling or changing the direction of the drain lines, or relocating in some ways, using structural soil, using compressed air, or hand digging. And part of the cost analysis and some of the back and forth that I had with the city arborist was, the other reports, the other cost and feasibility and design and alternative studies that they received had much more consideration of, what actually would it take, versus saying I would just have to remove a unit, or I would just have to not do something in my project. And so I guess what I'm asking today is that for whether it's 45, tree A8, perhaps tree 2028, to actually consider and evaluate what is the real cost of preserving those trees. What if you did preemptive root pruning? What if you did ramping? What if you did hand digging? Is there a possibility that we can save some of the canopy? As Jillian highlighted, I mean, this is almost $500,000. It's equivalent of 79 trees replanting that we're losing in our canopy. It's along the creek. Biodiversity impacts associated with that are significant. And I think if we want our ordinance to be something that we can brush aside and pay money to avoid doing the work, then I guess that's everybody's decision. But to me, that's not the spirit of what we're actually trying to do. And it almost makes me wonder, why do we have the heritage tree ordinance if we're not going to ask people to actually put together reasonable cost analyses and alternative design proposals, and then have it fall on somebody like myself, where I, on my dime, hired as an arborist to identify these trees. I took time out of my day to sit down with them and make them even consider some of these options. And the onus and the burden and that proof rested with me. And I just think that's backwards, right? The onus and the burden should be on the applicants in these instances. It should be on the city in these instances to make sure that we've gone through the appropriate steps. Because I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste the developer's time. I don't want to waste city staff's time. If essentially we go through this and we say, oh, we got something that was arguably good enough, that as Jillian was talking about in terms of their cost and design alternative, but not consistent with what they've seen and the city has seen in other projects in other instances. So that's roughly the outline of what I think should be considered here. If you do deny the appeal, I would encourage for as many 48-inch boxes as you could possibly fit in that property. I know there's 48s and 36s. I love the effort on the 48s, but I think considering that, I don't know if you can squeeze more trees in there, and as much as possible, the native species. I think we went through some of that in December, so I think those actually have all been changed. And I'm happy to answer any questions or perspectives. There is a full arborist report or a letter from that they included in the packet. So if there's questions on that, I'll do my best to answer.
Would you like me to share your slides in the remaining 4 minutes?
I covered the main points.
Include it in the minutes.
Oh, and then share it so we put it.
Supplemental or the.
Or almost a set of about everything that's in there.
The previous one, but
Okay.
this is the supplemental one. Is this a good?
Yeah, this is fine. So this is essentially what I just said. So the first slide is just the background which I talked about. So vital character and health of the city. And then here's, at least from outside looking in, from the emails and communications that I had with the city and conversations and interactions I had with the applicant, the way that I viewed the alternative design and cost analysis and the materials that were shared back with me, the timeline associated with that. And then finally, some of the points from the third party arborist in that report, they did identify some of the different pathways that could be or should be considered or across many of the trees.
And then whole slide deck. Anything from here to call out?
No, this just has a little bit more in terms of the canopy loss. So the 79 tree references is in this document. I think a few more elements in terms of the timeline. I think as we were able to speak with, as we had a little bit more time to actually speak with an arborist and have them go out and look, I think there's a lot of elements in this document that are relevant, but I think the argument to me comes down to just making sure that we've done the appropriate steps from a an alternative design and cost analysis. So I think those are the main points that I would have.
Thank you for your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Sustainability Manager Launder, please open public comment.
All right. We can open public comment for item D2, deny the appeal and uphold staff's decision to approve the permit application to remove 14 City Menlo Park heritage trees at 68 Willow Road. If you are in the room and you'd like to make public comment, we have cards over there. You can fill one out and return it to me. If you are online, you can hit the raise hand button, which is either at the bottom of your screen or to the right of your name, depending on your device. And if you're calling in,
Did we get a chance to clarify questions?
oh, yeah, we
Should
can
we
do
do that?
clarifying questions first. If there are any.
I have some.
Let's do that.
Okay, we will close public comment. So please stay online with your hand raised if you have, just so we can do some clarifying questions from the Environmental Quality Commission.
Just for overall context, I want to make sure I understand because there's different numbers being thrown around how many heritage trees are being removed. So in some places it's 23, other places 13, 14. This might be a difference between how many are being removed and how many were being appealed.
Yeah, so 23 being removed, 14 initially appealed. One of the 14 was resolved, which is 344. So it's down to 30. And those were the native species. So that was the reason for the 14 native species.
Thank you. Okay, and that answered my second question about tree 44. And it sounds like there was an additional proposal, was this correct, to about the 3 trees, 28, 45, and A8?
Those were the 3 identified as most likely candidates based on the consulting arborists that we retained. Based on their proximity to the edge of the property. And there was also some lack of consistency, I would say, in the initial plans that we reviewed with the site visit that our arborists had in terms of the actual location of those trees. So there's some question related to that. But those were the 3 that they viewed to be most appropriate candidates, at least for consideration.
And I guess I want to make sure, and maybe this is a question for city staff, are we discussing primarily those 3 trees or the whole appeal with the 13 trees?
That is a great question. Because the appellant had came in with the alternative designs or alternative a preservation plan for those 3 trees. I believe the appeal would be for those 3 trees, but we can Rachel, are you double checking?
I can, if you'd like me to.
We will get back to you on that
Well,
answer.
I think that the biggest thing, I mean, certainly those 3 under the current design and structure of the project. Some of the other ones are like in the middle of the building. So one of the things that I've never appealed something before like this, so I don't know what standard protocol is, but as you think about the design, and I don't know how far the design and cost analysis goes, so I guess that's my question on the other ones. But given the plans that as they exist today, our arborists said that these are the 3 that's relevant. If there's other changes to plans that would happen that you guys can consider, then that's up to you. I don't know.
The appeal itself is for the tree removal
Permit, the whole, that's what I was beginning to think. Okay,
because that's what was granted.
okay, that's helpful. Can I ask an unrelated but related question?
If it's clarifying.
You mentioned gas infrastructure for this new project, which is also something we spend a lot of time thinking about. And synthetic turf. We have thoughts about that. If you want to make some changes, we'd be happy to support you in the more environmentally sustainable ways. I'm imagining that's outside the scope of this particular discussion, but we would love to see an all electric infrastructure and natural gas.
So I have a clarifying question about the process. So the planning commission has not yet seen any of this, right?
Not yet.
Okay. And do we know that it does, so I understand that there's the density bonus that applies, but who confirms? Does the planning commission actually reaffirm that it does indeed apply, or is that just sort of a clear thing?
That's usually pretty clear throughout like the review process. That's all laid out in state law.
Okay.
So usually they'll propose, their BMR plan based on the proportion of the project that's affordable and at what level that gives them a certain bonus. This particular project doesn't have a bonus, but it's still subject to the density bonus law. So that all comes out during review. It's not something that the planning commission confirms at the meeting.
I'm wondering about changes to the plan. So the trees, if they get sort of settled and decided in one way or another, then it goes to the planning commission. The planning commission says, oh, hold up, you need 75 extra parking spaces and the trees are affected. What does it circle back to us? What happens?
So, no. Generally, so SB 330 has been mentioned a couple times. It's important to note that law limits public hearings to 5 hearings. So this is the 3rd.
Okay.
Planning commission would be the 4th. Project has a tentative map that needs city council approval. That'll be the 5th. So essentially, the trees and the appeal, it needs to be decided on here, and then the EQC's decision can be appealed to the planning commission, and the planning commission review the project as a whole, including the appeal.
Okay.
If it is appealed. Again.
Thank you. That is
Sorry, and then that can be appealed to the city council. So the city council could end up seeing all aspects of the project, not just the tentative map. They could see the use permit and architectural control and potentially the heritage tree control permits on appeal.
good. All right. Those are my questions.
All right. Okay, thank you. Sustainability Manager Lunder, please open public comment again.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay, we are opening public comment for item D2 to deny the appeal and uphold staff's decision to approve the permit application to remove 13 City of Menlo Park Heritage Street at 68 Willow Road. If you are in the room and you'd like to make public comment, we have cards over there that you can return to me. If you are using Zoom, you can press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or to the right of your name, and I can then unmute you. And if you are calling in, you can press *9. Don't see any cards in the room, but we do have some hands online. Please, if you'd like to make public comment on item D2, please raise your hand right now so I can get a good count. Okay, we have 2 raised hands online. And so we can start public comment. I'll start with Rebecca Eisenberg. I'm going to allow you to talk if you can unmute yourself. Vice Chair is 3 minutes. All right. Okay. And you'll have 3 minutes, Rebecca, when you're ready.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. My name is Rebecca Eisenberg. Although I serve as an elected director on the Santa Clara Valley Water District, I speak in my personal capacity only. I want to address so many things to address, but I'm trying to stay laser focused here. The United States and all parts of it are basically, we're the only developed nation that doesn't include environmental damage and irreparable harm by development in our actual accounting for the harms that can be caused by non-sustainable housing. And to be clear, the UN, especially in the 17 rules of sustainable development, make it very clear that any development that actually forwards one aspect of sustainability, such as housing, by means of sacrificing another, element of sustainability, such as life on Earth, is not by definition sustainable. In that in mind, specifically what other countries, and some lone municipalities recognize is that the cost of housing, and by the way, I can't see the timer, so I'm just trying to hurry. The cost of harming can include the following. I mean, I believe in housing. The cost of removing trees includes the following. One, trees are the world's best oxygen factories. They actually take in carbon dioxide and convert it to oxygen. They're the best carbon sequestrers on Earth, actively fighting climate change. During what is universally recognized by scientists as the largest mass extinction event since the last ice age, trees provide habitat for millions of endangered life forms. As a reminder, the extinction of one life form, can cause the extinction of thousands of other life forms that rely on that life form that it no longer has access to. Trees clean the air, they clean the water, they cool the temperatures, they decrease likelihood and harm caused by flooding, and they decrease the likelihood and harm caused by landslides, among other climate disasters. This, as admitted by the city and by the developer, this housing development was not built with tree protection or environmental sustainability in mind. From what I understand, the developers really didn't respond to the initial surveys, figured they'd deal with this later. And now that later has arrived, they now claim that they can't afford to reimagine this housing development in a way that is actually a sustainable housing development. But they have to. Because unlike what is mentioned here and a falsehood that is often believed is that mature trees can be replaced. They can't be replaced. They can be moved. They can't be moved. Trees actually have more going on under the ground than they do above the ground. Trees communicate in ways that we mere humans haven't even begun to understand. For example, they let each other know when a harm is coming. It is impossible to replant a mature tree. And most of all, you can plant literally 10 million seedlings, and that will not take the place of a mature tree. These trees are protected for a reason. You have a lot of, discretion here. And I ask that you think about the whole community. And I think the whole community needs trees. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And then we have one other hand raised. Preeti, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, and then let me just share the timer screen for you.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of reiterate partially what Rebecca said. We call them heritage trees because by definition, saying we'll replace heritage tree in my mind is an oxymoron. There is no replacement of a heritage tree. It is heritage because it cannot be replaced. The whole idea that we have the measurement of diameter, this, that, and the other, is essentially the root cause there is to prevent the biodiversity. What does the diameter do? It tells us the age, it tells us what biodiversity lives there. And we are ignoring everything and saying we are replacing heritage tree, which technically is impossible. And also, I see so many hoops being jumped around for a developer to come in and put in this development. Whereas as an individual, the city would not allow me to cut any of my trees. I have 4 on my property. It's a cause of big stress between neighbors. It is a huge expense keeping them trimmed and maintained. And I can never walk up to the city and say, hey, this is too onerous on me, or what is the amount that the city would consider onerous on an individual to then say that, okay, you could cut this tree and replace it with another whatever. So if I as an individual cannot do it, I don't think any developer should be able to do it. And this is just disingenuous on the city's part in my mind. At this point, better stop the pretense that we have this ordinance at all and just say, just get rid of it. So it's at least fair to the citizens as it is to the city when, and right now it kind of seems that the city can choose to do whatever, but the citizens are not allowed to play by the same rules. That is all I have to say.
Thank you, Preeti, for your comment. Okay, if you would like to make public comment on item D2, please raise your hand. Get one more moment here. Okay, we can close public comment for item D2 and return the meeting to you, Vice Chair.
Sounds good. All right, we can now discuss item D2. Thoughts?
What are the constraints and criteria for us to make a decision here? Because but Nancy and I were on the subcommittee around the Heritage Tree Ordinance Administrative Guidelines, but I would guess that knowing the Heritage Tree Ordinance and trying to decide in accordance with it is not necessarily what we're being asked. What exactly are we being asked?
What you're being asked is to compare what the applicant had submitted and compare it with the city arborist decision and then compare it with the appellant. And then you can ask clarifying questions, like for instance, do you need more information to make a determination for this appeal hearing? We could answer your clarifying questions.
So one of the things that Jillian said, and that was sort of explanatory about the way that administration of the Heritage Tree Ordinance works, is that she said that there was a discussion of a financial infeasibility or feasibility, and then information was provided, and then according to the administrative guidelines, it made it infeasible, so then it needed to go through. So I'm not, if that was the step of the steps by which that determination was made, wouldn't we abide by the same steps? Is there some difference that we would have here?
Is that a question to us? Yeah.
I don't know who, it seems to me that if the Heritage Tree Ordinance Administrative Guidelines are applied and Jillian applied them, I don't, are we not bound by them, or are we making a judgment call? Please help.
Yeah,
I'll start and you can jump in. So what the city arborist had made her decision was based on the applicant's submittal. It was not based on the appellant's. So the appellant's information is new.
Okay.
So that's where you can do your comparison. So you're not, I'll stop there. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, that helps a lot.
Okay.
I don't think I have anything to add.
So it sounded to me like the appellant didn't believe that the financial assessment was accurate. That's, I think, the difference between the city's current decision and the perspective of the appellant.
Yeah, I think it's inconsistent with what Jillian shared with me, just a couple of other examples of what those cost analyses look like, and they didn't look like what was used in this case. So that was part of what I faced my point of view on.
I seem to remember there were examples in the admin guidelines of the types of calculations one might make. Am I correct? Yeah, there are examples provided. Is the one that they made in step with the examples that were provided?
So it was a bit atypical.
Okay.
I'll admit that. Usually we use hard construction costs. Like, let's take a really simple example where we have a new ADU plan in the backyard and a heritage tree is too close to it. An alternative design that would still enable the construction of that ADU could be exploring a different foundation. Like, instead of concrete slab foundation, which requires a bit of compaction and excavation, you could explore an alternative foundation type like a pier and grade beam, which just limits the amount of excavation. So the cost of implementing that alternative foundation type is usually more than the traditional foundation. So you would take the difference between those two costs and then compare it to the tree's appraised value. So just those hard construction costs, the supplies, the labor, no soft costs. I did have a virtual meeting with the applicant team about the alternative design and cost analysis. And they were saying that preserving the trees would require omitting entire units, and that we decided, well, let's just have them omit entire units and use that as the alternative design and cost analysis, which still technically meets the city's requirements.
So if they omitted entire units, then they would save money, which would mean that that doesn't demonstrate the real financial. So, all right. So the idea is that the financial infeasibility is that you have to spend more in order to build around the tree. But in fact, if they just don't build at all, then it becomes financially feasible by definition. But in point of fact, the numbers for the entire project may not work out anymore. So I think it seems as though the logic of something about the value of the units they wouldn't be able to build is pretty reasonable as a financial infeasibility fact to me.
I see our city attorney has her hand raised. Can I allow?
I was gonna jump in. I know she probably will say better.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
So just letting you know that under the state housing laws, we have to make very specific findings if we ask the applicant to reduce the size of the project, including reducing the density and reducing the number of units. So we cannot increase the cost of their housing or make their waivers and concessions under the state density bonus law infeasible. So we may want to get more financial information if that's the route you're going from the applicant itself. If how your decision on this permit would impact the project and the number of units, we would need more information on that before you make a decision to do that.
It was a little hard to hear because the connection, did you say that we're not allowed under the law to force them to increase the cost or to decrease the density? Is that right?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Alternately, I'll try and calling in. Unfortunately, I'm having some unstable internet connection right as I joined the Zoom call. So please let me know if you cannot hear me and I'll call in via phone.
Sounded good.
Thank you.
You were saying earlier that this wasn't subject to density bonus because there wasn't enough density. Is that correct?
They're not proposing additional density. So density bonus law allows you to build more than what could fit there. So they mentioned 75 units per the zoning could be allowed on the property. Density bonus would allow you to build more than 75 units. However, density bonus law still applies to projects that are providing BMR units, even if they're not providing additional bonus units. So even though they're providing only the 50 units, which isn't at the maximum density, since they're providing the BMR units, they get the waivers and concessions that the state law allows.
Even though it's only 8 of the 50 units.
Yes.
There's some threshold or?
The city's requirement is 15% of, once you hit 20 units or more, developers are required to provide 15% of those as BMR. So that comes out to 7.5 units, providing the full 8 units. So that's a city requirement.
What's the total number of units again? 30?
Sorry?
30 is the number of what units?
50.
It is.
30 is the base density. And just to clarify, at 5% below market rate units, you qualify for state density bonus law and waivers and concessions that are in
And it sounds like Menlo Park's ordinance, though, is different, higher.
higher.
Requires 15%. Once you hit 20 units or more.
I have some questions about replacement trees. And it's true, you can't, a mature tree is ecosystem unto itself, and removing it is anyway, irreplaceable. But with regard to the replacement trees, I'm wondering, what is the actual size of a 48-inch box of a Coast Live oak? How tall? Does anyone,
Yeah, I'm the landscape architect, Scott Foyer.
Nice.
So designer for the project. So a 48-inch box oak will vary in size. Of course, it's about a 4-foot wide box for the root ball, but the height of the tree is probably 12 to 15 feet tall. When it goes in as a standard tree, if we do a multi-trunk tree with multiple trunks, they're going to be a little bit shorter. But I believe we're specifying all the standard single trunk, so they're going to be kind of a 4 canopy type tree.
And then the Coast Live oaks are the ones that are going in by the street?
Yes, we have some coast type oaks for the streets. And then we have some tighter areas on the site where we're trying to fit some additional trees. And the oaks are too big to fit in those spaces. So we have another native tree that we're using, the wild lilac.
Oh, the Ceanothus?
Yes.
Those are gorgeous. Which variety?
It's the Ceanothus Ray Hartman.
Oh, the Ray Hartman. I'm a fan of the Turks. They grow up like crazy.
So we have some tight spaces. So we are trying to put in some trees even in the tighter spaces, and that's why we're using that Ceanothus tree in those locations.
So tree 28. Such a beautiful individual. So and that one's 50 feet. And so we're definitely losing a lot. How long would it take a newly planted 15-footer to sort of recover and then start to thrive?
Yeah, I mean, when it goes in initially, it's going to have to acclimate to the conditions. You know, in Mother Nature, there's a lot of variety, elements that can affect the growth. But it's probably a foot or two a year, I think.
And what's built into the plan for ensuring that these new trees thrive and 5-10 years down the line?
Well, through the maintenance practices and the irrigation, it's going to be up to the maintenance to keep it going because they're mitigation trees. We're going to have them on the site. So they need to be there. So they need to be taken care of. And if they die, they're going to have to be replaced to meet that mitigation. And they can't be cut down unless they're mitigated again. Going through a whole nother tree movement process.
Oh, God.
So I'll jump in there. So all of these Coast Live oak replacement trees will be city-owned and maintained street trees. We're requiring that they replace the city-owned and maintained street trees that they're removing with new street trees back in our right-of-way. All of these oaks will be city-owned and maintained. It's my understanding you'll be installing irrigation for these. Then we'll also be assuming responsibility for maintenance for the trees. We have a 5-year maintenance cycle. If there are any issues with the trees, the stakes are falling over, they need structural pruning, the tree got knocked over in a storm, we'll have our city tree crew or our contractor come out and help care for those trees. The trees on the property, the Ceanothus Ray Hartman, those will be privately owned and maintained.
The ones that are being removed, is there any sort of everybody's gonna laugh at me, adoption or resale that goes on with that type of a tree? Is that anything that exists? I have no idea.
Adoption or
Resale, like, so
Not being removed whole.
Well, palm trees are often,
Transplanted to a public park or
yeah,
another site.
but these ones are too massive. Yeah, okay.
Well, it is very difficult and costly and logistically difficult to transplant trees of this size. It's not impossible. So I just, I want to point out that they're right now proposing to pay $422,000 in lieu fee as mitigation. I'm supposed to be biased, but I'm just throwing an idea out there. Maybe you could consider using some of that in lieu fee instead of just paying it to the city, using it to potentially transplant some of these trees. There are some really nice specimens around the property. Redwoods and coast live oaks are pretty tolerant of root disturbance and transplants. They have a relatively higher rate of transplants success.
It seems like you could potentially use that money to do different types of construction. To keep those 3 trees that were being considered with the different drainage and the different sidewalk.
Sort of seems like in order to build this many houses on this amount of land that, I don't know how you can even build this many houses on this amount of land, much less include trees.
Right next to the creek.
Yeah, right next to the tree, they get the big business.
I guess I do have one more question, maybe for the landscape architects. Because there's been a couple of a public comment and then with the appellant, how much was sustainability and the preservation of trees incorporated into the original design? I'm wondering if either of you can speak to that.
Yes, certainly. Well, with the density of housing that's proposed, it pretty much takes up a whole site, as you can see. If you go to page 56, I believe, on the agenda, the staff report, there's a site plan there that we can zoom in. And I can show you the 3 trees that are in question and the constraints around them that we're dealing with graphically, if you like. But it's based on the number of units, you know, the fire requirements for fire truck radii, turning, street widths, all the utilities that need to go in, all the underground infrastructure, the storm drains, the bioretention requirements to filter the storm water before it goes to their creeks and bays, which is great to have. It's a requirement. So that takes up real estate on the grounds as well. So there's really not much room left over. We have to have walkways. We have to have sidewalks serving all these units, and trying to skirt by the sidewalk next to the trees, right next to the house, the proposed building. You know, there's simply not enough room to have that with the storm drain lines, the bioretention requirements, all the infrastructure underground that you don't even really see that has to go in for this project to work.
Yeah, and just to add on to that too, I mean, this is, you know, roughly a 2.5 acre site, a third of an acre of which is being, you know, set aside for the trees along the riparian area and the trees along the creek and that area along the creek. And so you're taking, you know, a good percentage of the site and setting it aside just, you know, right out of the gates. You know, you're taking 15% or something of the site and setting it aside. And so, you know, things get denser on the rest of the site as you set aside that piece of the site for that purpose.
Yeah, so the creek corridor is being preserved, is, you know, a good portion of that. So that's a good.
One more comment on it, okay?
Yeah, please.
There's a local nonprofit, Canopy, and JP talks a lot about how trees are essential infrastructure, but it doesn't really feel like they're being considered as essential infrastructure in this project design. Is that accurate?
Well, the trees in the creek are definitely serving a nice ecological purpose, you know, and they're going to maintain that corridor along the creek. The proposed trees, you know, we're trying to follow the requirements from the city too, and all the street scape requirements, the number of trees and the spacings and where we're putting them. So, you know, and we're going with natives, you know, there's that plus. We switched out a lot of plants in the understory, the ground covers, the shrubs, to more natives. we're well beyond the requirements of WELO for water conservation. We're meeting all of that, and we're in tune with all those requirements. So our water use is way down. And yeah, we're doing the 3 inches of bark mulch and keeping that moisture in there in the soil, and we're doing all those different practices where we can.
I have a question, just in general, not necessarily for this project, but trying to get density in a fixed footprint. When and how do you consider the height, like how many stories a building can go? Just to address some of this in the future, not for this plan, but just so we understand. If you're trying to preserve trees or any, green space.
Yeah, there's
an
always
option also to go up.
There's always options for different types of housing. The proposal here is really geared more towards, family type housing, not apartment style. I mean, you get into the higher densities, taller buildings, in this neighborhood, how high are you going to go? What are you going to put in that density? Are you going to put 75 units in there like you could? Well, really, I could put 75 plus 50% of that, 100 units in there. If you went in that direction, from a cost to construct, a cost of sale, what's right for this location, all those things go into determining, what's the right type of housing for this part of the community. Could I save 2 more trees and put 100 units in a 7-story building on this piece of property? Probably. Are those 100 units the right units for the right demographic in the right location? Probably not. So, you're kind of weighing those, things as you're trying to put this together. I would say we're at the very kind of lowest end of the density to make a project like this feasible in this location.
So you're at the lowest end of the density.
Yes.
So why then not propose something higher density?
Because it's not the right, the neighbors would all be here clamoring about the 6-story building, not worried about the 2 extra trees that we're removing.
It wasn't,
first of all,
it wasn't, for example, city zoning prevention.
Well,
fire. It was more fitting into the community, and
yeah, there could be some city zoning there, but that's the beauty, I guess, of state law, because those things are all up for debate when it comes to height and setbacks and FARs and lot coverages and things like that because of the state density bonus law. But this is really, the owners felt like this was the right project height for this community in this location, for the demographic of what the sort of target buyers, more family, which, in the apartment style, it usually ends up being singles, couples, maybe a few small children. That's really not kind of the demographic for this.
I do think that the trees are oddly a very big part of the economic benefit of developing New Menlo Park. It's just leafier than every other city, and if you we've had a look at an aerial map of the region, and it's sideswiping, you can see the boundaries of Menlo Park practically when the trees stop. And so preserving the trees is an economic imperative. And when you look at the heritage tree ordinance, it does not take into account the effect of a piecemeal removal of the canopy here for this project, and then the next project, the next one, the next one. But we do keep track as a city and as an EQC of the net changes in the amount of canopy. And it's, yeah.
Oh, heritage.
Oh yeah, we get the little guys getting planted, but the canopy's going away.
So we can continue discussion or their motion.
I have other questions that I think are maybe more planning commission questions. I'll ask them and tell me if it's not appropriate. So I also live close to the San Francisquito Creek, and it's been, like, as a parent, it's been a great way to go down and play, with the kids, and just so lovely to have wild space close to home. And so as we were talking, became curious, like, is there a walkway that people can, be under the oak trees that are by the creek? Is there a way to get down to the creek? And I'm looking at the details and it looks like there's a fence where people can't actually get to the trees or the creek. And I'm wondering, is that
We have some
necessary?
open space, usable open space. We have a synthetic lawn gathering area.
Can we get rid of the synthetic one?
And that certainly we could look at that. We'll have to make sure our water calcs work. That's one of our biggest concerns is we're trying to follow WELO. We have to be compliant with water use and lawn high water use.
Okay.
So
There's some resources that we have that I'd be happy to connect you with. So if we are doing natural grass organically, that it actually ends up being cheaper and more, and if we choose drought resistant grass
yeah,
types,
we
it ends up being
with
like
sod
less
material,
costly
seed.
in terms of water as well as money.
Yeah,
And the
we-
water district rewards you,
Mhm.
I forget how all that works.
Yeah. Yeah, we do a lot of our projects following the stop waste, bay friendly guidelines and things. So we're familiar with lawn alternatives and such, but
Okay, good.
your traditional lawn that kids play on and things is, in this region and Lilo is rated as a medium water use. And more you get into the Central Valley, it gets more to a high water use. So we're able to argue it as medium in this area. So, yes, we could certainly work on that. It's definitely we need to be concerned too about the shade of those trees that cast their shadows on the real lawn. And we have issues with maintenance and the grass not growing in those shadier areas with those mature trees that we're saving. So we have to contend with that too. And that's really why we drifted more towards that synthetic lawn. There was really two reasons. It was water use and, long-term maintenance and growth due to the shade.
I'm just looking for where the synthetic turf is, because I think there are other things you could do. I mean, because the synthetic turf has so many health problems for humans as well as the planet. And if you're trying to figure out like how can the kids play, I think there's many other options that we could put there instead of plastic on our planet.
Totally fine. Yeah, we can totally explain that with you. Yeah.
Be more inclined to approve this if the synthetic turf was gone and if there was no gas going into the buildings. I know that's not really on the table. Anyone feel free to stop me.
No, I do
If
too.
this is not-
I love my heat pump.
Yeah. Okay.
We can pose the question to the city attorney about negotiating other components.
Yeah,
If you'd like to.
I think we need to be careful about that.
She just unmuted.
Yeah, you're outside your jurisdictions. You can certainly recommend the planning commission to consider your suggestions. But right now, this is outside your purview.
Okay. I was worried that was true.
Yeah.
If you make a proposal.
It's just passion.
Sorry, I was just completing my thought. You can ask applicant to also consider your suggested changes voluntarily. And they can, if they agree or if they, to those changes, that's allowed, but you cannot impose these changes on them.
And it sounds like it can't be part of our formal
Yeah.
vote that goes to wherever it goes.
Yeah, the staff
That's
can certainly let the planning commission know what was the discussion as part of their staff report, but it's not part of the appeal you're considering today.
Thank you. Are you clear on my requests?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Feel free to email me if you want.
Sounds good.
More discussion.
Give a motion.
I'm very impressed by the amount of time and effort put in by Mr. Crum and the commitment to understanding the tree ordinance. I think writing a law to preserve trees is tricky. There's always going to be laws or imperfect rules, but the fact that we're all sitting here talking about it is I think a success. Thank you for your flexibility to think about natives and turf.
I could state two options for the motion if that's helpful, because I know sometimes formulating is tricky. But there could be a motion to deny the appeal and uphold staff's decision to approve the permit application. Or there could be a motion to approve the appeal and deny staff's decision to approve the permit application. Or something else.
Question, if we approve the appeal, does it still goes to the planning commission, right?
The project as a whole would go to the planning commission. Yeah, technically, I think at that point, the applicant would have to appeal your decision to the planning commission. Although city attorney might jump in here though.
Yeah,
we wanna
they
be
can,
careful. Oh,
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, we want to be careful about a denial of the removals. Just because when it interacts with the housing laws, could be interpreted as a denial of the project. And unless we have those very specific findings that our city attorney was talking about, detrimental to health and safety, essentially, that could run afoul of state housing law. So that.
Yeah, I'll chime in. Your decision here has implications for Housing Accountability Act and how the project the applicant can and cannot go ahead, and implications for the city. You can certainly also ask the applicant if there's voluntarily that's something they can agree to make certain design changes. That's something you'll have to ask the applicant to at least incorporate some of the changes suggested in the Pellant's Arborist report. That's an option, but that's a voluntary requirement, and the applicant has to agree based on their financial impacts and whether it affects the number of units of the project or affects the waivers and concessions then they can make. And or we'll have to make specific findings, and I'm not sure we have enough information to make those specific findings to basically approve the appeal. But as Chris said, that can be deemed as denial of housing project under the Housing Accountability Act. It's an option. Again, we'll have to go more into detail of analyzing, but we are certainly, that's something to consider.
If we ask the applicant to consider these voluntary measures, would the outcome of their decisions come before the planning commission? So we can know what they've decided to do?
Ideally, yes, but I don't think we could require them to make those changes before planning commission. Is as it stands, the project or currently the project is in compliance with zoning. Yeah, we can't ask them to do more.
Okay, and if we uphold the appeal, does it mean that trees and other sustainability measures would be discussed at the planning commission as part of their broader decision about whether to approve the project?
It'll be, so if you uphold the removals, deny the appeal, uphold the removals, and then that decision is not appealed to city council, we will talk about it in the staff report in terms of like what happened at the EQC hearing. We'll talk about like landscaping in the staff report, but the appeal window for the tree specifically will have closed, and then that would be part of the planning commission's approval. That said, the removals are technically dependent upon approval of the project by the planning commission and city council. So the trees wouldn't be removed until the project is approved and forward through construction. But as far as making another decision on the removals themselves, that'll be out of the planning commission's.
Oh, wait, but if we uphold the appeal, we say the trees, we're not okay with the trees being removed, doesn't it? someone then has to appeal that to the planning commission?
The applicant could appeal that.
The
decision.
applicant could appeal that, which would mean the trees would be discussed at the planning commission.
Specifically the heritage tree removal permits, yes.
Thank you.
So to be clear, if we approve the removal, then the planning commission doesn't have to address tree removal, but if we block tree removal, they will.
Unless appeal, so the EQC's decision can be appealed. So if you deny the appeal, that decision can be appealed again.
It's more like we are upholding, if we uphold the appeal, the applicant can.
Either way, the EQC's decision can be appealed. So it just depends on, you know, what the decision is and who decides to appeal.
I guess the question I have is the planning commission and the city council depending on the EQC to make decisions on trees? And once we've made a decision, they no longer consider that in their decision. So if we're like the last line of defense of trees, if you will, or do they also consider the heritage tree?
Not unless appealed.
I really like the idea of the discussion of trees going to the planning commission. So
Again, under the Housing Accountability Act, which is a state law, you can only impose objective design standards on a project. So we have some Housing Accountability Act issues here. So you may, I would suggest the commission asking the applicant if they're willingly agreeing to consider some of the design changes suggested by the applicant's arborist and try and incorporate that in before the planning commission hearing.
you guys willing to consider that?
Agreeing to consider, that sounds like it has a lot of teeth. Well, we would not agree, we would not consider it, but that doesn't mean that anything's gonna come of it. I mean, of course, we'll consider, I mean, we've considered it when we designed the project, we considered it when the appeal came up. We'll consider anything that anybody has to say about the project, but I mean,
Yeah.
I think we've
You've
tried to consider it as much as we could already.
You know what I'm really struggling with is not even this. I'm struggling with if essentially our city attorney is saying we have to uphold staff's decision, why are we even here?
Yeah, why did I spend that money
Yeah, kind of.
and take my time? It's garbage, honestly.
Yeah.
Is it the additional
Yeah.
constraint of the state law that
Yes.
applies and
Yes.
that's what's happening?
Then why was this even allowed to be appealed?
Yeah.
Why did that happen?
I think because of our heritage tree ordinance and the way it's laid out, I think city staff is following this.
It's telling you exactly what you need to do right now.
I know.
That is true.
Can we like not vote on it and just let it, or can we all abstain? Like what happens with that?
And the appeals.
Well, that's
denied, I
the
would
same
think.
Yeah, then it would just. Yeah. Does anyone have a recommendation? I'm really feeling torn.
I think we're probably all feeling torn because we know housing is a huge issue. And for those of you who've kind of followed the abundance discussions from Ezra Klein, you know, as a society, we're wrestling with multiple goals. As we've heard here, you know, trees, water, electricity, gas, density, you know, there are many competing objectives. And I guess where I'm starting to come down here is I also want to protect our trees, but we're talking about 3 trees versus 50 houses. And, you know, they are mature trees and I get that. But, you know, if you count the number of mature trees in the state of California, right, if you just go out to the hills, you know, and we have an awful lot of mature trees and we are a metropolitan area. So in the balance between affordable housing and 3 trees, you know, to make it harder for developers at every juncture. And it does seem like they've tried very hard to, within the constructs, the constraints that they have among state regulations and city regulations and water and density and replacing trees with native trees and ground cover, it seems like they've done an awfully good job of trying to meet the intent. Notwithstanding your point that the system, and we've come across this issue before, as I recall, a year or two ago, where the city arborist had to approve a tree removal, which we all felt like, gosh, we should be able to see that, but we do have laws and we do have zoning and we do have planning requirements that have been met. And I think the unfortunate thing is it's not clear to me that developers in the very early stages of design are always considering tree canopy, especially heritage trees, with the same level of consideration that maybe we as the EQC does. And that's on us to fix our ordinances and our zoning to make that more clear at the early stages. But to hold up this project at this stage, to me, does not seem like a judicious step. That's my one person's opinion. So I would move what Rachel suggested as the first, where we uphold the city's decision.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Kissel and a second by Vice Chair Meyer to deny the appeal and uphold staff's decision to approve the permit application to remove 13 City of Menlo Park heritage trees at 68 Willow Road. And we will do roll call vote in alphabetical order. Commissioner Angel,
Also conflicted.
I really did abstain because I'm sorry.
Commissioner Hill,
Oh, the motion is to
Uphold the
deny
city's
the
decision.
appeal, uphold the city.
yes.
Aye. But I am gonna go and watch Tree 28 being.
Commissioner Headley,
Abstain.
Commissioner Hernandez. Hey. Commissioner Kissel.
Aye.
And Commissioner Meyer, or sorry, Vice Chair Meyer.
Aye.
Okay. In the event of a tie, or kind of not a conclusive vote, we'll need another motion in kind of a reverse. If someone who abstained would like to make a motion.
So we had 3 ayes and 4 abstains. Is that what
We had 3 abstains, 3 ayes, and then a recusal. Kind of a not a majority.
Is an abstain a no? An abstain means they didn't vote, so it's 3-0.
Yeah. City attorney, maybe.
So we
And
have
we said
3-0-0-1 and then 1 recusal, right?
Correct. Does that carry the motion?
Usually we need a majority of the members present. Do we have majority?
Did they abstain or vote no?
1 second. We have 3 that voted yes and 3 that voted abstain from voting, and then 1 recusal.
I'd have to think, usually in case of ties, the staff's decision is upheld. Here we still, so with the recusal, we only have 6 members. Is that correct?
Yes. Correct.
City clerk is online, so I'm checking with Judy. Hina.
Yeah, can you please do that? I'll also double check. I've never been in this situation before.
1 moment, please.
This would be here.
Okay, our city clerk is checking.
That's ChatGPT. A hanging Chad situation.
It's looking at our handbook.
Judy online,
She is, she.
keep researching.
Motion fails, abstain is not for or against, is not, yeah, not for or against, and 4 votes are needed. So we will need another motion.
Well, what if the other motion doesn't pass?
Same
Then
motion again?
if the other motion fails, then staff's decision is upheld.
Okay. All right, so somebody who abstained wants to make a motion to uphold the appeal, right? That's the next step we have to take.
Correct,
Or we could move the same motion again.
correct.
And what if we all sit here quietly staring at the
I would love a third option, like, I don't know if that's. I think it is out of the scope. What I want is something that's more creative, like,
Move the tree.
Mhm.
Move the tree.
no, not really move the tree. But, see what we can do to preserve these last 3, because I don't want to deny the entire heritage tree removal permit application, but I would love to see something more creative happen with these 3 trees and the turf and the gas. Yeah, that's what I would propose that. But I think that's outside of the scope of what we're doing.
Can't do that.
If the applicant is willing and deems that those 3 trees don't create don't make the project infeasible or result in having to redesign the project, we could have a motion that denies the appeal for some of the trees and approves the appeal for others. So there's a little bit of room.
Otherwise, you look at the visual map, though. I mean, it's pretty clear what, I mean.
Yeah.
I've heard the arborists talk about how the root structure is really critical, and seeing how close some of those trees are to the structures, the likelihood that they will.
they do not look savable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
The current, otherwise you'd have to redo the whole plan.
But she did say that it might be possible to transplant trees, right?
Not the 50-foot one. I don't know what the other two, how big are the
Those
other
the
two?
coast live oaks that are like, yeah, they're huge. Right? They're just gorgeous mammoths.
Yeah.
They're like a pair of Paul Bunyan.
Right.
Okay, I'll propose the opposite then, that we uphold or
Uphold the appeal. Approve the appeal.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Headley and a second by Commissioner Hernandez to approve the appeal and deny staff's decision to approve the permit applications for move 13 City of Menlo Park Heritage Street at 68 Willow Road. And we will do roll call vote in alphabetical order. Commissioner Angel?
right?
No, if you want to say.
You can vote whatever you want.
Vote yes.
Well, but we're just gonna have the same result. If
That's
It's
true.
It's okay to have the same result.
It is okay to have
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah, we don't go into overtime or anything.
I'm not gonna be the one to.
No, they won't.
Okay, so I then.
Commissioner Hill,
Nay.
Commissioner Headley.
Aye.
Commissioner Hernandez.
Aye.
Commissioner Kissel.
No.
And Vice Chair Meyer.
No.
Okay. So we have 3 nays and 3 ayes, and so the decision to deny the appeal and uphold staff's decision to approve the permit application to remove 13 City Menlo Park heritage trees at 68 Willow Road stands.
That was close.
So that's it for this
Yeah.
item.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. We'll take a moment for Chair McKenna to return to the meeting if he's still here.
I'll go grab them.
I guess I'd like to say that, Mr. Crum, thank you.
Yeah, thank
For your.
Okay, yeah, I'm.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay.
So confused.
And then, let's take a quick break for.
Bio break or just a break to get shot?
I'm trying to take a break, but I'm just seeing the option. Okay, so we're not taking a break, just grab the job. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
These are tough ones.
you.
I say these are tough ones.
I know, that was not,
They don't
fun at all.
objectives.
That was nice.
Well, in the hamper high already.
Yeah, we are.
What's that?
In the hamper already high.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back. We will move on to item D3, which is a presentation from the Community Engagement Ad Hoc Subcommittee. We'll bring that presentation up on the screen.
It's just loading.
Okay, so I'll just do a quick run through. My ad hoc subcommittee colleagues are welcome to chime in at any time, and then we can open it up for discussion. So this is just a preliminary report from our subcommittee. We've been doing some research and talking to folks and brainstorming ideas, and we just wanted to check in with you all, make sure we're on the right track, get additional ideas from you all. So we'll do that this evening. Yeah, so Commissioner Kissel, myself, and Vice Chair Meyer are on the subcommittee. This is our quick agenda and just a reminder of what the scope of our committee is, which is research potential engagement with a comprehensive set of stakeholders and explore potential of a community task force with purpose of aligning city community-wide efforts to achieve climate action plan goals.
How do we advance the slides on that? There we go.
So we kind of have 3 initial strategy ideas. And we'll go through these, but we're like a sort of a lighter lift to a heavier lift, probably in order. Move to the next slide. So this first strategy is, and I'll just like also say, like, Menlo Park is not alone in trying to figure out ways to engage the community. We've talked with other cities and they struggle with engagement and community-wide climate action. So the first strategy is really just sort of what we calling enhanced business as usual. So utilizing the city's existing communication channels and whatever those may be, the weekly digest, the website, social media, physical signs, flyers at city facilities, different community events, and maybe even coming up with some different ways of enhancing those existing channels or figuring out new channels, and really making it more of a coming up with sort of a CAP focused content and materials that could be incorporated into those channels. And we all think it's important to find the right messaging. What is gonna, I think this strategy is kind of more of a communications and activation kind of strategy, like what's going to activate folks into doing things or tapping into resources that are provided to them through this set of communications. But then going back to like what is the right messaging? Coming up with a program on that. What's going to inspire people to take action? Should it be sort of specific to different stakeholders, or is it just general messaging that goes out to the entire city, entire community? So that's kind of the sort of first strategy. The second strategy was kind of like the original vision of what this task force might be, which is like, come join us. We're having a meeting. We're inviting all the different stakeholders in the city, and we'll have another slide to talk about who are the stakeholders that we're trying to bring together. But this concept is well, it's also a question of who's going to organize this, but it's an organized set of meetings that bring all the different stakeholders together. We educate on the climate action plan. What are the goals? Inspire action. Maybe there's roundtable discussions that are broken up by different categories like buildings or transportation. Is food a part of this? It's not really part of our climate action plan, but we know that food is our food systems are big contributors to emissions in general.
Rachel, can you advance to the next slide?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then just, bringing people together, figuring out like how many meetings, where the meetings are held, who runs the meetings, what are the topics, and creating this sort of program with the idea really of just listening to different stakeholder groups. What are their barriers that they would be facing in working towards achieving the goals in our climate action plan? And then collectively figuring out solutions, connecting again different stakeholder groups with appropriate resources, whether those resources are at the city level, community level, state level, federal level, wherever those resources might be, whether it's Peninsula Clean Energy that has resources that would help different stakeholder groups sort of determine what their goals are and then figure out ways to achieve those goals. It could be topics around the stakeholders talking about what are the right policies and programs that the city needs to put in place for us our stakeholder group to achieve whatever goal we've agreed to. And a lot of it is like, what does that stakeholder group feel like that they can achieve, and creating a method to getting to that ultimate goal. I think we like, well, okay, so we have, let's say we create this group, this working group of stakeholders. How do we get people to even come to the meeting? Do we send out a poll to the entire community? Hey, the city or whoever's thinking about creating this program for engagement. Would you be interested? And then like sort of gauging interest from that poll. And then maybe that poll is also a tool that the results are used to figure out what who would actually come to the meetings and use that as a recruitment tool. Yeah, and then we'd love to hear from you all just on your thoughts on this concept, the logistics of it, what are the right topics to focus on in those meetings. And then strategy number 3 was more like, strategy 2 was like bringing people to a certain location, and strategy 3 is more like meeting people where they are. And it's maybe the one idea we had was just create like a small sort of steering committee or leadership team that creates this canvassing program. Or for example, like a whole like a one-pager maybe that we've created, and it is a tool that folks can use to go knock on doors with and just have conversations with people. There's this sort of deep canvassing concept where you're not necessarily like selling something or promoting anything. You're just like having a conversation and learning from that conversation and potentially engaging people that way. But yeah, what would be the right talking points? And maybe it's knocking on doors, or maybe there's like different subcommittees, and one of them is focused on, say, commercial buildings. And you're not going to go knock on doors necessarily in that context, because you probably need to talk to the building owner, and it's a commercial building, is probably leased to a tenant. So this subgroup would sort of like find the right people to talk to about building decarbonization at the commercial building level, and creating a presentation or setting up meetings where you actually go to their office and have a conversation and a meeting with them and learn from them what they're doing. Where are they open to like a building performance standard, and what would it take for them to achieve it? What goals are they able to sort of establish for themselves to make their buildings more energy efficient or reduce emissions? So that's sort of the third topic or strategy idea. And then, we had some initial conversations just around the differences between communications and engagement. Communications is more of this outbound sort of messaging to the community, but it doesn't necessarily like bring people together, engage them. And because we've learned with certain topics in the city that this engagement often happens late in the process. Like, you look at the downtown housing situation, it was something the city was working on for years, but the engagement from the community really ramped up later in the process, when it would have been more productive probably to have that engagement early on. So thinking about that sort of difference between communications and engagement, and just how do we even like reach people? We talk with different cities, how they communicate with their communities. Some have monthly newsletters that are hard copies that go door to every door in the city. And then they might also have like a weekly newsletter that people sign up for. There could be similar things that Menlo Park's doing. We are, as a subcommittee, going to have a meeting with our public engagement officer. I think that's the right title, public information officer. But we're going to learn more about what the city's already doing, and then bounce some ideas with her to inform our ultimate report to the commission. We went through to try to figure out, so who are the people we're trying to knock on doors with or bring to these meetings? And so we've listed a number of different stakeholders, from renters to homeowners to commercial building owners to schools, Peninsula Clean Energy, Stanford University, the city itself, PTA, schools, churches, religious organizations, the youth. And so youth adult sports leagues, there's probably like neighborhood associations that we're not aware of that we want to include in this. So we'd love to hear the commission's thoughts on this list of stakeholders, and if there's others that are missing that we can add to it. And then looking at what are the existing community organizations that are already doing some work within communities, whether it's Menlo Spark or Menlo Together or 350 or Climate Resilient Communities, Bellhaven groups, Bellhaven Empowered, Bellhaven Action. I heard something today that progress goes at the pace of trust. So it's really like we need to have trusted voices talking with their communities to really engage folks and make sure that the messaging that they're hearing is something that they can rely on. And then what is that messaging? So, we're all aware of our climate action plan and the goals, but is climate action even the right message that's going to help us achieve our climate action plan goals? Is there different messaging that will resonate better with folks that will still get us to where we need to go with our climate goals? So is that affordability or economic benefits? Is it stressing health, safety, bringing together the community, and sort of, the cost of inaction is much greater than the cost of action now. What kind of jobs, what kind of messages do we think would resonate with the community, and should that messaging be stakeholder specific, or does sort of a general message resonate with everyone? And then we just love to hear, we were just thinking about some other considerations because our CAP goals, what expectations should we have around our community's ability to achieve our CAP goals? And what can other commissions or other departments within the city, what role can they play in helping the city achieve its climate action plan goals? There's opportunities to do bulk buys, and so would that be a way to engage the community and establishing like block captains around the city that are a trusted leader in that neighborhood that could organize the neighborhood to do something collectively? And how do we engage the workforce, make sure that workforce is robust and is going to be there and well trained and well paid to do all this work that we need to do to decarbonize our city? And then what role can the youth and students and schools play in this process? And then, kind of looking at the strategies that we've come up, love to hear from you all, like, are these the right strategies? Are there strategy ideas that you all have that are missing? Do we need to do multiple strategies? What are the costs and benefits of each? Other ideas and ways to communicate? Again, like, if we do this more organized thing with group meetings or canvassing, who leads that? Is it someone from the city? Is it an EQC volunteer? Is it a third party? Is it just strictly community driven? I'd love to hear your ideas on that. And I open it up to my committee colleagues to add anything that research that or whatever I missed.
Yeah, there was one other point that I took out of the conversation with Portola Valley was they actually have an additional group of citizens that are different than the official commissions that are topical in nature, and they try to, and they're more informal, but they try to address topics of community interest. And that I think ties into some of the points that John made, but I think the challenge is how do you get the resources to do any or all of these things? And what I found interesting was that Portola Valley has found a way to get more citizen engagement in various topics of community interest. And so they have, I can't remember the number, like 9 citizen-led groups. I can't remember what they call them. I don't know if you have is it the backup slide?
Yeah, I think
Task force.
What's that?
The task force
Maybe a task force, something like that.
or committee.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called, but anyway, I thought it was an interesting idea.
Forum? Portola Valley Forum?
No, that's their website.
Okay.
That's another interesting idea. So, Ladera and Portola Valley both have citizen-led discussion forums, digital discussion forums that are run by citizens, but are monitored by the city, and the city can provide content to it and read from it, but they are on topics of interest to the city, to the citizens. So those were both interesting ideas that, if we, and I think I shared with some of you, I'm doing that in Sharon Heights. I've created a little website that, specifically for Sharon Heights residents, so they can talk about anything they want. We share resources. But I think whatever we can do to try to, and I think another important point that John made was this notion of stakeholder groups and trust. I think if we can find ways to communicate with these influential stakeholder groups, whether they're community associations, like their neighborhood association, or their PTAs or sports teams or whatever they are, they tend to be, people tend to be more responsive to that than they do from, going to the city's website or an email blast from the city. So I think that two-part, how do we connect? So the communication, how do we get them aware? Like, I wasn't aware, quite frankly, that we had that email distribution list that we could sign up for on all these topics. And I want to, so the fact that I don't know that, like, even make people aware that they can sign up to be updated on multiple topics of potential interest. And you can get it via email, you can get it via text, you can sign in, you can sign out. So I think there's a lot of work we need to do to help just drive awareness. And then once you have awareness, what's the next step to drive engagement? I think that the whatever that informal organization that Portola Valley has, where people come together without the strictures of a commission that have very legal constraints, and just say, hey, we care about whatever pet health, and so we're going to have a group that comes together that talks about pet health and what can we do in the community to drive pet health. I think we could do something like that because there are people in our community who do care about environmental issues. I think there are lots of situations where it does come down to health, safety, economics, and we can't presume that they're all about climate change. They're all about how's my life going to be better. So anyway, I think that the discussion, the citizen-led activities, whether that's a discussion forum or these volunteer groups, are ways to amplify our resources. Because that's what it comes down to. And I think the extent that some of these groups are trusted cohorts within the community also then increases the probability of engagement beyond just communication.
Yeah. I'm just trying to hear the rest of the commission.
Yeah. So I think that's it. There was a really interesting webinar last year put on by Yale program for climate communications, and it was really local government focused. Like Boston and Denver were the two cities they had representatives speak from, which are obviously much larger cities, but they just made, there was also one person which was with the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, which is a sort of a nationwide director of local government sustainability officers. But the woman, Julia Peak, talked about, really in communications with your community, talk like a human was what she said. So like decarbonization just doesn't resonate with folk. Heat pumps, most people don't know what a heat pump is. So really making sure that language connects climate and sustainability in meaningful ways with people's everyday lives is really important. There were ideas about having like short little videos that the city sends out with real people from the community saying something about what they did. Like, I don't know, I got this EV car and I've driven it up and down the state and I love it, or whatever the case may be. Short little videos that might grab people's attention and let them know that people in their community are doing this, and it works and it's good. So that was another idea. The messaging needs to be simple and accessible, really making sure that anybody can access the messaging, that it's in multiple languages so that everybody can connect with it. Making sure that the messaging is positive and action oriented is really important. And they talked about just like repeat. Like they said that the average person needs to hear something 80 times a month or more in order to actively support significant climate action.
80 times a month?
Yes.
Wow.
So, it's like persistence, I guess, is the message there. San Luis Obispo has this like story-centered climate action plan. So they've incorporated this they went out to the community and they asked for people to tell them, like, Nancy's done this at events, draw your future. Like, what do you want to see in the future? And you were about that too, Zach. But yeah, and then they incorporated those visions into their messaging and even into their climate action plan. So, and also just making sure like that it's across the entire city, every department. And when the city goes out for grants, making sure that there's funding asked for in those grants for community engagement. So I'll leave it at that. I'd love to hear thoughts from the commission. And I guess initially we will open it up to public comment. Unless, Rachel, you have anything?
No, I think that's great.
Okay. So, okay. Do we have any clarifying questions from EQC? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Launder, do we have any public comment on this item?
I will open up public comment for item D3, presentation from the Community Engagement Ad Hoc Subcommittee. There's nobody in the room, but if you're online, you can hit the raise hand button. And if you're calling in, you can press *9. And we do have one raised hand online, so we can start with Brian Schmidt when you're ready for 3 minutes. And I will ask you to unmute and I'll pull up the timer, but you can start whenever you'd like.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, folks. Brian Schmidt from Menlo Spark. Sorry, I can't be there in person today. I want to thank the committee for its great work. I realize we're in an early stage on this. I do want to say that whatever is decided by Environmental Quality Commission and the city to try and engage the public, that Menlo Spark will do its best to partner with the city to help magnify the messages and engagement that's being attempted. Beyond that, my thoughts are a little bit more vague, I might say. But I was thinking that there might be some value in looking at both near-term and long-term approaches to community engagement. Two things I'm thinking about that regarding why near-term might be different. One of which is it seems to me quite likely that the climate action plan is going to have to be changed, that we're going to need to do something about the goals, because the goal of climate neutrality by 2030 is very unlikely to be reached. So what is to be done instead? And we can't really ask people to support goals when we don't know what those goals are yet. Although we could ask them to help us figure out some of those goals. The other issue that I've been pondering is the downtown parking voter initiative. I think we probably really want to see any type of controversy over that issue be separated from this community engagement discussion. I'm not sure how to do that except by maybe focusing on smaller issues at this point. Finally, there's some other things that are happening that I think are particularly interesting. For example, Peninsula Clean Energy's virtual power plant program that's going to be getting up to speed in 2026. Trying to engage with that along with other things that Menlo Park is doing, I think could be a useful way to move forward on this. The slide with strategy number 2 discusses about providing support and resources. There are resources that are already out there, but maybe support is a way for community engagement. Something along the lines of what Commissioner Kissel has been talking about for any program like electrification, solar panels, VPPs, the renter assistance package that Menlo Park is developing. There could be a forum online or maybe even in person where people discuss and engage and get more involved through that process. So I welcome this moving forward and I look forward to the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, just double checking, see if there's any additional public comment for item D3 in the presentation on the Community Engagement Ad Hoc Subcommittee. Okay, there's no more hands raised online, so we can close public comment on item D3 and return the meeting to Chair.
Great, thank you. Put it up for discussion and no pressure. Would love to hear from each and every one of you. So you want to go first?
Well, I can go first. Yeah, so I have seen like 3 different things happening in the last like 4 months, and see how people able to see how people have been engaging. So, for example, in one of the TVO meetings that we had at Fairhaven, they had like a presentation about like an initiative to fund transportation in the Bay Area. And then when it comes to message, because what the lady heard that I was dealing with, she was feeling like, oh, I'm going to be taxed more. No, thank you. And the message shouldn't be like, oh, well, you're going to be taxed more, but if we don't fund transportation, then if the traffic is bad right now, with no transportation, it's going to be worse twice or even on more. Yeah, so I think the message needs to be more like what are like the benefit of investing on our like on initiatives. Yeah, because these programs are like, oh, I'm going to be taxed 1% more. Yeah, instead of like, yeah, if we had like more public transportation, then we would have access, and even this person will qualify for like the free transportation services. And but she didn't see that. She didn't like, oh, I will qualify for getting free and Catherine, she heard like, I'm getting the extra tax, and then like right now, like the city working on the pool and they're having, and they're trying to get people's feedback, and people are like overwhelmed with like the email. So when we had like a meeting like that, people they're like, oh yeah, I got like 100 emails from the city, and it had people with all of them. So what we did, some of us we went to the front desk and got like a bunch of like paper survey, and it was good to engage them with the survey in paper and in person, and then even with Menlo Park and Fairhaven Action, they have been knocking on people's doors, and then I have seen like an increase on people coming to those meetings. So people they want to make like the world better, but they don't understand like we're trying to figure out how can we make it better, because there's like some financial restraints.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are my.
You found it seems like door hangers are an effective way to communicate.
Yeah, and the problem with our mail in Belhaven, because even when the city decided to give everybody like a coupon to go and swim for free at the pool, not everybody got it. I go around and ask, I'm like, oh, do you get this coupon? Like, oh, I never got that. And people like a few months later, like, oh yeah, I finally got it. And, yeah, but I think we need to go like door by door when to do it. Yeah.
Anything else?
I think that's it for now.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
In terms of messaging, I agree to like front and center the cost of inaction, as well as the affordability, and highlighting any resources and support incentives that are available. So like the virtual power plant or rebates or tax incentives. Also the cost of inaction. I think from what I'm sensing from my personal conversations, as well as monitoring the collective, the economic piece is really important right now. So I would highlight that. And then I also think health and safety is, and maybe jobs too, but I feel like across the board, economics would apply to business owners as well as, people of all economic situations. In terms of stakeholders that I didn't see listed, the downtown design district might be one to add. And then
Is that a collection of business owners?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly downtown, like all the different
Rug stores.
rug stores and furniture stores and, interior designers. Cause there's a lot of that going on downtown. So they've got their their flags up. So somehow finding them.
Yeah.
And then in terms of your specific ideas, my reaction to that is I like the idea of continuing to inform people broadly about opportunities and incentives and ways they can save money. I like the videos idea, making it accessible to the average person. I think way more than we've been doing is probably helpful. And I appreciate everything you were saying about making it, like a human talking. That's important. And so that's kind of like the business as usual, but like amped up a little bit. I think everything, Brian, you were saying about, people coming together to discuss topics that are of concern to, to community members. There's nothing getting in the way of people doing that right now. So I don't know if there's a role for the city to play in that, other than people just knowing they can organize, and become a community organizer, which is, I think, useful and necessary on a variety of levels. If we were to, as the city, engage people, I would want it to be really clear about what it is we want them to do. I like the idea of, it could be a broad, we want your input into the climate action plan. And if we're going to update the climate action plan, what are you worried about? What are your concerns with doing that? I think that could be very useful. So it could be like a broad funnel. We want all of your input. It could also be a more select thing where there's an application process where we make sure that there are people representing all of the different stakeholders that we want to, kind of touch into. And part of the application process, I think, would get people, if people are going to go through the process to actually apply, that gets them engaged and more committed. And then if they had a very clear role that the city kind of oversaw, and they could be like that vector into the community that they represent, I like that idea, but I would want it to have a very clear outcome.
I like that.
And then the third thing I like is partnering with existing organizations to get the word out. I think what we've been doing, I think what's been, it's still early days with the $4.5 million, funneling into Belhaven and other parts of Menlo Park, but it's like we have a resource, and now there's the building of the trust so that people will accept the resource and make the changes in their homes. But they're going out with a really great message, essentially we're here to help you upgrade your home and make it better, safer, healthier. So I think that having something to say hey, we want to help you, and working with existing organizations that have the trust, I think those are the two key pieces. So, okay.
Thank you.
I'll start small. I found a couple of different organizations that you might talk
I
about.
just say typos.
Really
small.
I didn't start that small. But I kept asking, who's going to do this? And I thought, it's really a case, I think, where it's got to be leverage. I imagine knocking on doors, while effective, it's not really something that we've got the scale to do. And so therefore, it seems like the partnerships are going to be the way to go to enlist people. So that seems really promising. And so you have the private clubs in town, Sharon Heights Golf Club, Menlo Park Country Club. I think there's an Italian Nationals Club, so I seem to remember. There's the League of Women Voters at South San Diego County. Very upstanding organization, 56. So there's the Chamber of Commerce, which wasn't listed, but I bet you were talking. I bet you just left it off by mistake. Menlo Park Chamber of Commerce?
No, I think it
We
closed.
do. Oh, we closed?
County.
County San Mateo.
We used to, when we would have the wine and art. thing.
Yeah. Oh, gee. Okay, so, it seems also as though if there were, people who were, doing this work from within this commission or anyway, that maybe it would need to not necessarily cover all of the cap, but maybe go down to the initiative level. And so then maybe align around the highest impact initiatives that are being identified by the Stanford project that the subcommittee is doing in the spring. Or the project could be, redoing the cap, which is gonna need to be updated anyway. And if the really exciting bit was this idea that in Portola Valley and Ladera, there are these standing groups of citizen advisors that are not commissioners, but idea and discussion people. And I think a standing group of people who are doing something like that, tasked with either a job or a role, is very exciting because I think engagement over the course of years becomes a lot more interesting. Toward that end, I know that there are a lot of people who applied to be on the EQC who there weren't spots for, so those would be people to tap. That is it.
So I really loved when you mentioned about going to existing stakeholder meetings. I feel like that is sort of a much more effective way to get people's attention. I think, when you're using the business as usual channels, the emails, the text messages, flyers, it's just, there's so much that people are just overwhelmed. And if they're at a meeting, they're sitting, they're ready to participate.
And you bring donuts.
Yeah. I just think that's the way to go, and that's where I would channel 90% of my effort. Go where they're already gathered and talk to them. I think for the messaging, I liked all of it. I mean, I think everybody has a different thing that they're concerned about. I agree that there's a big concern about the economics right now. I think presenting it as, what do you have to lose, like was mentioned earlier, versus what do you have to gain, presenting that really clearly, just tip the scale, you want to do this because you have so much to gain, and and then I think just people have trouble with anything obtuse and too future, and it needs to be really right in your face, what's happening right now and what can you do about it right now, and not waiting for somebody else to fix the problem, and not waiting until everything's burnt down. We have to do something now, and here's why, here's what you have to gain, here's what you have to lose, just making it more imperative to people. And I know that's hard to do in a positive way. So there's that balance of yes, if you act now, here's what you have to gain, so that's the positive side of it, but also don't forget that this is what the problem is. In terms of that Portola Valley model of, these groups, we have the Menlo Park City team already. And I was
What's the city team?
So it's the Menlo Park City climate team that meets every month.
Part of 350 Silicon Valley.
Yeah. So I feel like that's a good place to start and grow that. And I like the idea of future commissioners and also past commissioners that, one of them on there, or soon to be past commissioner back on the team. But yeah, what else was I gonna say? In terms of like a community-led discussion board or forum or something, I mean, there's Nextdoor that's already pretty active. So maybe leveraging that. I feel like when I go on there, it's like if anybody posts anything about their pets, it's like like, and everything else is kind of so people are related to their pets. So I don't know if there's a way to leverage that, but you know, bring your dog to the park and talk climate.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but pet owners are very I love the video thing, the video idea for sure. And what else? Oh, recently I was in the middle of cooking dinner and my phone rang and it was a local number and I was like, who is this? And it was Sam Licardo's town hall calling me, say, would you like to be tapped into the town hall? And I said yes. And I listened in and I was still cooking my dinner. So I thought that was very effective. Because I probably got 10 emails about it that I didn't read because my inbox is overloaded. But like, oh, when they called me in the moment, I was like, sure, cooking dinner, I'll listen in.
How did they get your number?
I don't know.
Did you ever sign up for his newsletter or something?
Anna Eshu used to do that.
Yeah.
So I wonder if he's
yeah
gotten it and just started doing the thing.
That's true.
That's like a really critical question. Like we're trying to figure out how do we reach people? How do we get their contact info and make sure they want us to have their contact info. But yeah, I just keep wondering how they I don't know, like did everybody in his district get a phone call? Or
I don't know. Yeah. And I think for Anna Eshu, it used to go to my home phone, which no one ever answered. But this went to my cell. So so just an effective thing. Because actually the phone ringing is different than getting a text, which is easier to ignore. It was like maybe this is about one of my kids or something important. And then the other idea I had, which is always an incentive for people, especially in this economic times of trouble and woe, is paying people to be on the commission. Like the citizens committee. If there's some money to do that. Even if it's a small token thing, but just
donuts.
Yeah, I mean we talking about like if we were to have these community meetings, we need to serve food, would there need to be a stipend for people to be compensated for their time? So yeah.
And I have maybe one other thought if you're it takes effort to organize things like this. And in the early days when I was serving on the EQC, there was a subcommittee related to community outreach and we were beginning to do that outreach. And we kind of ran into problems in terms of like where could we actually hold a live meeting, and we didn't have money to rent a space. We couldn't use city space. We didn't have money just available, to buy food and donuts or whatever we wanted to lure people in. So I guess to deal with those challenges, either the city takes it on and they say like, okay, this is a city thing. And I think there are some examples of the city hosting events related to electrification that are happening. So we could, encourage them to amp that up. Or there could be, an RFP around the various nonprofits in the area who might be willing to come forward and hire staff to organize and make sure these things are happening, but with city funding, I think could help. But someone's like to keep these things working ongoing, they're going to need money, they need resources. And if the city can't do it, but they have the money, somehow that
yeah, and then Peninsula Clean Energy is sort of changing their community engagement approach, and they're going to have this community feedback forum as opposed to having like a 15-member community advisory committee. So, PCE is a critical partner in all of this, and like the city could probably maybe amplify that opportunity for folks to get engaged more directly with PCE, which, frankly, they have a lot of the support and resources that Menlo Park residents can tap into.
John, you know how they're doing that?
Yeah, they're well, I don't know how they're going to bring people to the meeting, but they're going to have sort of specific topics for different meetings. They're probably going to have 4 meetings throughout the year. I think the first one's going to be like March 4th or 5th in Half Moon Bay, and it's going to be about resilience and making, like, because PCE is developing programs to offer solar and storage, which makes it much more palatable for folks to electrify once they feel comfortable that they don't have power when should the power go out on the grid or whatever. So they'll have like a resilience-based one. They're going to have a very health-focused meeting and show how what PCE is doing, benefits people's health. And they're going to bring in, like doctors and whatnot to talk about the health impacts of burning fossil fuels.
So these are in person only or in
Yeah,
person?
they haven't figured out if they can do hybrid or they'll definitely will be an in-person component, but there might, if they can figure out the technical details, they might do a hybrid as well. But yeah, like I think they're thinking about having one in Burlingame at their new community center, which is all electric, and the one in Half Moon Bay, and I think they're going to do one in downtown Redwood City, perhaps. But anyways, yeah, it's sort of similar to what the reason PCE did this was they wanted to bring more voices, more stakeholders into the conversation and get their input and have them be more sort of leaders in their community with the knowledge of what PCE can offer, and then also helping shape PCE's programming to make sure it's benefiting the community in the way they need to be assisted. So the Menlo Park can amplify that too through communications.
Are those meetings for that committee now, is it people are selected to be on the committee and it's open to the public?
No, it's all open to the public.
So it's more.
Anybody's invited.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's
They
an
will target-
education component and a feedback component.
Yes, that's the idea. Thanks, everyone. Anybody else have any other thoughts they want to share with us? Great.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, it's very interesting. Frustration. All sorts of clever. It's like, I think the video idea with San Carlos, one of the ones that I talked to, they're actually active
Quality Commission workplace. None. Ms. Launder, do we have any public comments on this item?
Sure, let me open up public comment for item F1, the Environmental Quality Commission's work plan. So if anyone in the room, we can go straight to our Zoom participants. Can hit the raise hand button if you are interested in making public comment on item F1. Okay, no hands raised. So we can close public comment and return the meeting to you, Chair.
Okay, with that,
I'm wondering,
Oh,
do we just need to say out loud that the February meeting is moving
Oh,
a week later?
Yeah.
Is it the time?
yeah, I can share that. So the February regular EQC meeting is canceled on February 18th, and we'll be having a special meeting on February 26th to accommodate our school, what's it, winter break, midwinter break? So just noting that instead of Wednesday, it's a Thursday of the following week,
6.
same time, 6. And we'll hear from the Food Systems Ad Hoc Subcommittee as well as Rethink Waste and potentially the County Sustainability Department on their food recovery efforts. Thank you.
thank you for that, yeah.
And then we also have a council meeting, on Tuesday of next week, where home upgrade will be an informational item, so you can check out the staff report. I'll send it over to this group.
Thank you. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.